Adonai Kol Mishal Sefer. Ata Yodaiti. Yeshia Adonai Mashiach. Yarnehu Mishmei Kodshem. Igures Yesha Yeminu. Eile Barechev. Veile Basusim. Anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Nazkir. Hema Koru V'Nafolu. Anachnu Kamnu V'Nesego. Adonai Yeshia HaMelech Yaneinu V'Yem Karenu. We're going to be using these sheets, so let me do them out now. I left the sheet for myself. Yeah. Understood. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get us a tshuva. We're up to Perek Dalet, chapter 4, and we're using the lessons in Tanya, well, the most recent edition, and we're on page 219. So in the beginning of this Perek, we started off with explaining that we're going to go into the difference between tshuva tato and tshuva ilah. Which literally means a higher level of tshuva and a lower level of tshuva. According to Zohar, it means that the word tshuva is made up of two words, pashuv, hey. Meaning that when a person does tshuva, the hey of Hashem's name returns to its source. What exactly does that mean? So that's what he's going to display. But as far as the introduction goes, it's to understand that there are two heys in Hashem's name. Hashem's name is spelled Yud K, Vav K. So the first hey is called Ilah. The second hey is called Ketatot. First hey is called the higher. The second one is the lower hey. And therefore, when we say tshuva tato, it means the lower form of tshuva is where the lower hay is brought back to its source. And tshuva ilah means that the higher hay is reconnected to its source. But what does it mean? Reconnected. In order to explain all that, he started with an introduction. The introduction is that the difference between Yidden and the rest of the creation is everything in creation was created to Hashem's speech, and the neshama is to Hashem's breath, blowing. Speech also has breath, but this is to Hashem blowing. And he explained that this metaphor means that when a person speaks, then the energy that's exerted is more or less superficial energy. When a person blows, it's deeper energy. Meaning to say that the neshama comes from a deeper place in the spiritual realm. In different words, the neshama comes from Shem Havaya, and the rest of the creation comes from Shem Elokim. In fact, when you look in Bereshis, the Chumash where it talks about creation, it starts off Bereshis, Bara, Elokim. And all the other utterances are Vayomer Elokim, let there be light. Vayomer Elokim, let there be ocean. Vayomer Elokim, let there be grass. Everything with the name of Elokim. The Gemara says that the name of Elokim is mentioned 32 times in the Chumash. The neshama is derived from Shem Havaya, and that's the meaning of the pasuk which he began with. This pasuk will come up more than once in Tanya, comes up a lot in Chassidus. The pasuk in the parsha of Hazinu, which is coming up soon, Yichelet Havaya Amay, which means that the neshama is chelik, is part of, not only part of Hashem in general, but specifically Shem Havaya. So even malachim, even angels, they come from the external aspect of Hashem, and the neshama comes from the internal. And another way of saying this is that the malachim come from Hashem, the letters, and the neshama comes from the thought which is behind the letters. So after he gave this introduction, now he's going to explain how the neshama, the neshama of a person, actually, because it's a manifestation of Shem Havaya, therefore the neshama itself, the structure of the neshama, or the way the neshama is put together is a reflection of Shem Havaya. That's what he's going to explain now. It's going to look like Kabbalah did a little bit, but it's not as difficult as it is. But we'll try our best to explain it with these sheets. Hopefully it'll be easier. Yeah.
I would say great part of things like why did the whole world come from?
Because the whole world comes to what's revealed in the world is Shem Elokim, Tzimtzum. Creation, nature, limitations, Shem Havaya, that's something that's hidden, even though it also originally everything comes from Shem Havaya. We said that Shem Elokim is like the shield, Shem Havaya is like the sun, but that is hidden, that's concealed. And what we could relate to openly is Shem Elokim. Our purpose through davening, through learning, through mitzvahs, is to make the Shem Elokim more and more transparent, that the Shem Havaya could shine right through it. The Mashiach comes, Shem Elokim will be like clear glass. The light will shine, but there'll be no changes. It'll be shining the way it is. Right now, it's shining through colored glass, and everything is sort of concealed because of Shem Elokim. So on page 219, we begin to explain this point. So the sheet that I gave you is, right away, he begins with the words of Eliyahu Hanavi. Where did Eliyahu Hanavi speak? So as we all know, there's a sefer called Zohar. And in the Zohar, there's a part which begins with these words on top of the page. This is the one that says here, Mincha Fe'er Shabbat. That side. It begins with the words, Pasach Eliyahu V'Oman. Eliyahu opened his discourse and he said, so these are the words in the Zohar, but he's quoting Eliyahu Hanavi. It's in our Siddur. Not everybody says this. Hasidim and Sfardim, the custom is to say this every Friday before Shabbos. Others don't usually say this because they don't associate with Zohar. But this is one of the sources, maybe the source, of the whole idea of the 10 spheres. And as we'll see in here, he talks about how the 10 spheres correspond to the soul, that the structure of the soul and the structure of the sort of spheres they parallel each other, they correspond to each other. And Noid, as it's known, Maimer Eliyahu, the well-known statement of Eliyahu, where he says, Antu da pikas asar tikunim, you Hashem are the one who revealed or manifested these 10 tikunim, which means 10 garments, but it means that, and we call them Esa spheres, 10 spheres. Why they called spheres? Some of you might know. Right, sphera can also mean the word. It comes from the word Evan Sapir. a sapphire stone, right? Which means something that shines. So it means 10 lights that shine. Of course, it's only a mushroom, but we're speaking, Torah is speaking to you. So everything has to be expressed in words that we humans could relate to. But there are many Maimorim that explain that there are a lot of details where we draw a parallel between light that comes from the sun and the light that comes from Hashem, and that's why it's called light. Stephen, you revealed this in order to conduct the concealed world, in order to conduct the revealed worlds. Let's turn the page. Just like I explained yesterday, Hashem is infinite. So if his light would open up, it would also be infinite. Where does the 10 spheres come from? And the answer is because Hashem chose to create a finite world, and he wants a world that is made up of detailed and limited laws of nature and millions and billions of different kinds of creations. So therefore, he manifested of himself that his light should be sort of structured in these 10 spheres. And from these 10, it breaks down to smaller details and smaller details until we have the world that we have here. Then it goes on to say like this, Ant Chakim Hashem, you are wise, you have wisdom, but Lei b'chochmei, you're not the wisdom that we know. At Maven, you have Bina, you have understanding. But Lei b'Bina Yedir, but not the Bina that we know. Call Hayut spheres, all the 10 spheres. It goes on, and it's all on this sheet. This is quoting this sheet. The Call Hayut spheres, all the 10 spheres, Nechlolas v'Nirmazim v'Shem Havaya Baruch Hu, are actually hinted in the name Shem Havaya. So, we turn to the other side of the page. No, the other sheet. This sheet. We know that the number 4 is a very popular number in Torah. And if you ask somebody why 4, they'll tell you, according to Hasidus, it corresponds to the 4 worlds. Oh, okay. Then you look at another place, it corresponds to the 4 letters of Hashem's name. Oh, okay. And you go on, you find more things. They're all interconnected. It's all one connected to the other. And what he's saying is that even though there are 10 spheres, the 10 spheres themselves are broken up into 4 groups, 4 categories. And how is that? So let's look at the sheet for a second before we do it inside. First is Chochmah. Chochmah and Bina. The Chochmah is represented by the letter Yud. Bina is represented by the letter K. You know, we always say K because you shouldn't really be pronouncing this name of Hashem. The Vav represents the 6 emotional attributes, which is Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And it's also referred to as Zah. That's another word in Kabbalah to describe the 6 emotional attributes. What happened to the 7th? The 7th here is listed separately. The 7th is Malchus, which is the attribute of royalty. So in some places you'll find, everything's divided into 7 because there's 7 emotional attributes. But the 7 emotional attributes themselves are divided into these 2 categories. You want to make a note of it. Zah is the masculine, and Malchus is feminine. And just like the days of the week, the cycle of a week is 7 days, but is divided into parts. The 6 days of the week and Shabbos. They're 2 separate things, but they're also one. It's 1 week, and they're all interconnected. So what he's going to say now is based on what was explained in Tanya, in the 2nd volume of Tanya. We touched on it a little bit last year when we learned it, those of you who were here. And that is that the Alter Rebbe explains that the physical shape of the letters are actually vessels through which that light shines. In other words, when we say that Yud corresponds to Chokhmah, it means, number one, that there's something about the way we pronounce the word Yud, just the pronouncing it is connected to Chokhmah. And something about the physical shape, the way it's written, is also something which is something that represents Chokhmah. And the Hey represents Bina. And the Vav represents the 6 emotional attributes. and the last hay represents Malchus. So just to refresh your memory, what the Alter Rebbe explains is there's a very interesting story in Medrash, which without Chassidus is very difficult to understand. It says in the Chumash that Hashem told Adam Arishan, I'm going to bring all the animals to you. This is in the Chumash itself, and you name them. And Hashem brought every single animal to Adam, and he said, this animal is called this, and this animal is called that. Of course, he gave the name in English. There was no English in those days. Everything was in Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue, the language with which Hashem created the world. So the Medrash says, what was this all about? The Malachim, the angels, came to Hashem and they said, why are you investing so much in humans? We're so much higher and greater than humans. So Hashem said to them, I will show you that his wisdom is superior to yours. And how did he show them? He brought every single animal that exists in front of Adam, and he knew the name to every animal. So the Arizal asked, where's the wisdom in this? How is this connected to wisdom? If you don't know the name of something and you say the right thing, it was a good guess. It has nothing to do with wisdom. Like I gave the example, if any one of us would go to a foreign country, you go to China, and they ask you, what is this called in Chinese? And you say some weird word and say, wow, you got it, you're right. It's not wisdom, it's just something came out of your mouth, which happened to be the right word. So the Arizal explains, no, this was actually brilliant, deep, godly wisdom. Why? Because of this reason, that the letters of a creation that corresponds, which means that just like, think of it this way, an architect, he's building a building. When you look at the I don't know what it's called, the paper that he prepares, what do you see? Lines. Boxes and lines and straight lines and crooked lines and little boxes and bigger boxes. And he looks and there's the window, these are the doors, this is that. This drawing that he has is a perfect image to the T of what's going to be with the real thing. It's a small scale in writing, in lines of what the building is going to look like. Of course, someone who doesn't have an understanding doesn't see the connection. But when you understand, you see that every detail there, even the measurements, the inches, even less than an inch, everything means that this is going to be so big and that big and so on and so forth. So therefore, for example, when Hashem brought before Adam Arishan an animal, let's take the example of a lion, which in Hebrew is Aryeh, Aleph, Reish, Yud, then here would be a Hey. This is the way it's spelled. So Adam Arishan, in his brilliance, looked at the lion, saw the physical structure of the lion, was able to perceive the characteristics of the lion, was able to perceive the spiritual purpose of the lion. And he said, based on that, the godly energy that's giving life to this animal must be such and such. And if that's the case, the letters of Hashem through which it was created must have been an Aleph, a Reish, and a Yud. That must be the diagram through which it comes through. And therefore he knew that it's Aryeh. And that requires brilliant godly wisdom. And the same with every animal. So in a similar way, we're going to explain now how Yud K Vav K corresponds, the actual physical form and shape of the letters correspond to the 10 spheres. So again, all Yud spheres, all the 10 spheres are included and represented in their source, which is the name of Hashem. By the way, if you look at the sheet that I gave you from the Zohar, it's underlined in 2 places. Here's where he talks about the 10 spheres. Down here, he explains that even the physical body, the shape and form of the physical body, is also a manifestation of Shem Havayim. But now he's explaining the soul, not the body. Yeah. No, we're saying the physical shape of the body the structure of the physical body, we can draw a parallel between that and the structure of the spheres, the mind. But here we're talking about the structure of the soul. Yeah, Yud starts with the Yud. Yud, Pinus Nakuda. What's the Yud? Yud is just a simple point. In other words, other letters they have length above, let's say, is long. A Hey has breadth, it goes to the width, it goes to the length. But a Yud is just a dot. So that dot represents the Chokhmah. In our Mezeh, the Chokhmah is Bara. Why is that? She Pinus Helen, the Hester, was Chokhmah's concealment. Kodim Shabal the Pinus is Pashtus, the Gili, Hasogiv Arona. Chokhmah is the state of wisdom, but before it expands, before it extends, and before it's able to be comprehended. I'll soon explain that. What about that little thorn above the Yud? Means in the Sefer Torah, when you look at a Yud, you'll see on top of each letter there are little top lines that are called crowns. Sometimes they're called little thorns. It means a little thin line that represents something which is even higher than Chokhmah, which is Hashem's will. Shalamayla Mailu Madregas Pinus Chokhmah Lo Keneba. I'm going to say the words and then we'll explain. After this point of Chokhmah is amplified and revealed and developed, and it comes to a place where now we can understand it and comprehend it. Now it becomes represented by the letter Hey. Hey is different than the Yud. Hey has his pashtus. It's something where it extends in the length and in the width. And this represents Bina, where things are explained and elaborated on in the width. The Gam Leirich, also the length. So first we'll start with why is Chokhmah and Bina represented by Yud and the Hey. So again, the difference between the Yud and the Hey, Yud is representing just a dot of ink. In essence, a Yud is just a dot. And Hey is when the dot spreads out. The difference between Chokhmah and Bina is Chokhmah is a dot. And Bina is when it spreads out. So what does that mean? We need to understand the difference between Chokhmah and Bina. What is the difference between the two? Very often, people will say Chokhmah is the like the lightning. A thought comes to me, and Bina is understanding. And also, even in this page here, it says that Chokhmah is before you understand it. Chokhmah is supposed to be the highest level of understanding. What does it mean? It's before you understand it. Chokhmah is in a sense the first level of understanding. So Chokhmah and Bina, in very simple terms, would be compared to like a seed and a tree. So the seed contains in it all the details of the tree, but you need to plant it in the ground and you have to cultivate it to grow into a tree. Or sometimes they use a mushel of a wellspring. We know that rivers, what's a river? A river is a long stretch of water that could be stretched for miles. The river is very wide. But if you go back to the river, where did it start? How did it begin? Very often you see there's a spring of water coming out of the ground, and that water flowed and flowed and flowed, and eventually became the river. The stream itself is almost like the water coming out of a faucet. It's just a stream of water coming out of the ground, but when it flows, eventually it flows into a river. So Chokhmah is compared to the stream that comes out of the ground, which we call the wellspring, Mayon, and Bina is like the river. So what does that mean? So one of the ways of explaining it means that every logic, every process of thought and logic and intellect involves these two stages. There's the essence of the concept, and there are the details of the concept. The essence of the concept is the Chokhmah, and that's abstract, and that's the source. Bina are the details as the concept gets developed. It's a very deep point that I'm making, and a lot of my morim that talk about it, very deep my morim, but for the sake of being able to understand it, I'm going to try to simplify it. So I'll simplify it by first starting with something really simple, and that is a simple concept which everybody understands. But imagine, I'm giving this example. Some of you heard this from me last year. When you walk into a classroom of little children, this is the first day in their life that are learning anything about arithmetic. And you say to them, Kinderlach, how much is 2 plus 2? And what are you talking about? So you explain it to them. And you make a picture of 2 lollipops, and then another 2 lollipops. And then you ask them, so how much do we have altogether? 1, 2, 3, 4. Good, you got it. I guarantee you, you walk into class tomorrow morning, and you ask them, children, if you have 2 hats and 2 hats, how much do you have altogether? They're going to say, you never told us anything about hats. We can tell you about lollipops, but not hats. So you teach them 2 hats and 2 hats, count. 1, 2, 3, we got it. Walk in the third day. We have 2 chairs and 2 chairs, how much altogether? You never told us anything about chairs. This will go on for a while. What's going to happen eventually? One day it's going to be like, I got it. It's not about hats, not about chairs. It's not about potatoes or tomatoes. It's the concept, 2 plus 2 equals 4. And now anything you'll ask them to know, the answer is 4. So in a sense, the concept of 2 plus 2 is not connected to apples or oranges or tables or chairs. The concept itself is relatively abstract. But this concept can be applied to how many things? How many? Infinite, yeah. Everything and anything. But the concept itself is not a lot, it's not many, it's an abstract, it's a point. That's what I mean by a point. So the truth is anything you learn something in Chassidus, you learn something in halacha, you learn something in math, you learn something in science, you have a certain principle of science, a certain theory. The theory itself, the initial theory is one point. And that one point, again, we have airplanes today, we have missiles today, we have jets, we have spaceships going to outer space. It all started with the first plane that was created. It looks very different than what the Wright brothers were flying and fell on the ground. But the principle, whichever they came up with, the science behind that they're flying, that was the Nakuda. Then it was developed into all the different things that we have throughout the ages. So basically, this is the way it is in halacha, and this is the way it's in Torah. But even this has to do with Yiddishkeit. This is just the structure of logic. All logic, any logic, has this structure. So therefore, when we say that Yud is something which you can't understand, it doesn't mean you can't understand. It means a person can have it in his head where he gets the essence of the concept, but it's abstract. It's not something which you can put into words. It's almost like more of a feeling of the brain, because once you put it into words, you're already breaking it down to details. If I talk about it with words, I'm applying it to science, to halacha, to something else. By the way, the principles of logic in science and the principles of logic in math and the principles of logic in halacha and the principles of logic in chassidus, the principles of logic are the same, but they're just applied to different subjects. And that principle of logic, if you can take something and show how this is a principle of logic in chassidus, this is in psychology, this is in halacha, this is in math, but it's all the same principle. You'll see the principle itself is something very, very deep and abstract. When you start applying it, it becomes more simpler and easier to grasp. So that's what it means, that Chokhmah is beyond understanding. Bina is when you take that principle and you start developing, applying it to details. And now it's easier to grasp because we're dealing with something more tangible. I'm dealing with a specific subject. With this Chachma Bina, you understand what I said? Bina, okay, thank you. Now we come to the Vav and the Hey. then it's possible for this concept, which is in my mind, to be drawn down even lower, to be revealed more. For example, a person, what Nida's described is what I'm experiencing within me. I'm thinking about a concept, I have the Chokhmah, I have the Bina, but now I want to transmit this concept to another person. So the concept will be revealed even more. Before it became revealed through Bina, but in me. And now we're talking about how can I reveal this and share this with other people outside of myself. And that's through speech. When that happens, the Chalal is Remezes, I'm Shachazu, but Ish is Vav Kei. That's represented by the next two letters, the Vav and the Hey. Ki Havav, page 222. Havav Meira Alam Shacham B'Maila L'Mata. The way a letter is written, especially in Sefer Torah, is you have to start from the top. So when you write a Vav, there is no width, there are no details, there's just a line that starts on top and goes down. That's all. So Vav represents going down. When you talk about going down in something which is not physical, what does the down mean? Down means more revealed. Why? Question is, what does B'chal up and down mean when you're dealing with something that's not physical? We know up and down could be in space. This is up higher, this is lower. It could be in numbers. The numbers go up or the numbers go down. What will be up and down when you're talking about intellect, logic, emotion? Yeah.
It's coming down into this world where it's more tangible for us to grasp.
Right. So one way of describing up and down when you're dealing with things that are not physical is the more abstract something is, that's higher. Usually abstract means it's less limited. The more concrete, the more limited, and the more formed and shaped, that means lower. Both when you talk about Hashem or when you talk about the Neshama. Because up and down has to mean there are 2 points. Closer to the higher point is up, closer to the lower point is down. What are the 2 points? 2 points are abstract or concrete and tangible. So basically, when a person thinks about something inside themselves, there's much more energy to it. We explained this yesterday. When I have to speak to another person and tell them what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling, then it gets watered down. It's not exactly what's going on inside. In fact, it's to some degree exterior of what's going on inside. Yeah.
Or concealed in a way. Like you're revealing what you're in front of is thinking, but it's still like something that's like things out of this world, but in a sense being concealed.
So what's concealed?
Like the
Yeah, you're right. It just the word revealed and concealed has 2 meanings, depends on what context you're using it. Very good point. But I'm speaking, am I revealing or concealing? On one hand, I'm revealing to you what is going on in my mind and in my heart. On the other hand, the energy is being concealed. It's true. I remember when I started to teach these young boys my morning, that's when someone came and asked me a contradiction. He just saw somewhere where it said that when you speak, it becomes more revealed. Then he saw another place that says when you speak, it becomes more concealed. And the answer is they're both true. Just depends what the word means. So a lot of these words depends a lot on what context they're being used, especially the word concealed and revealed. Which is more concealed, Atzilus or Bria? Or let's say Atzilus or our world? Our world is more concealed, but our world is more revealed. Everything is there is hidden from us. So it depends on how you're using that word. There's a saying when boys start learning Gemara, which is about age 9. So in Aramaic, there's a word chamra, and it's found in Gemara. And chamra means wine. It's spelled with the aleph at the end, chamra. But chamra also could mean a donkey. So the teacher would ask the students, so how do I know if Chamer means wine or a donkey?
Context.
So the answer is, well, it's in context, but he said the answer is, depends where it is. If it's in the cellar, then it's wine. If it's in the stable, then it's a donkey. Meaning to say, where is the word found? Next to what other word? What's the beginning of the sentence? What's the end of the sentence? You know, they say this teacher told a student to make a sentence with the word I. So he gets up and says, I am. That's again. I is, and he says, no, I am. I am the ninth letter in the alphabet. You know? So it depends what you're referring to when you say the word I. Are you talking about a letter in the alphabet? Are you talking about yourself? And the same thing with every language. So revealed and concealed has these two meanings to it. So why is the Vav representing that this energy is being revealed further? Because the Vav means it's going down. The Gam, another reason why the Vav represents this, because revealing things out into the world comes mainly through the 6 emotional attributes. And they're hinted in the Pasuk, L'cha Hashem, Abdullah, V'agvura, V'atefes, V'anetza, V'hed, safeness and davening. And in fact, that's why Hashem created the world in 6 days. The Zohar says these 6 days really mean the 6 attributes. So Sunday, Hashem created the world with Chesed. Monday, Hashem created the world with Gevura. Tuesday, Hashem created the world with Tiferes. And in fact, there are places that explain and show draw a parallel between what was created and the emotional attribute of that day, why these things were created on Monday and these things were created on Thursday, because it's all connected to that. So these are the 7 attributes to which Hashem, and that's why Hashem created the world in 7 days. So the emotional attributes, that's what brings things out further. Again, to explain this a little bit more, one of the differences between intellect and emotion, intellect is something that I experience within myself. I don't need another person for me to experience things intellectually. Not only I don't need, but usually things outside of me are a disturbance, are an interference. We know that people who are big thinkers like to isolate themselves. We go out to the forest, in a cave, under a tree, away from people because the noise and the people, it was actually disturbance. So an intellectual person is more into his own world because intellect is something that I experience within myself. Emotion is all about me experiencing something with another, something outside of me. Any emotion you describe is about me relating to something outside of myself. So therefore, emotion is the place in the soul where things start connecting to the outside world. Same with Hashem. The level of emotion, that's where creation begins, because that's Hashem revealing things outside of himself. So that's why it's in the Vav. So there's 2 reasons for the Vav. Number 1, the shape of the Vav goes from up down. Number 2, Vav is 6. The number Vav is number 6. And this represents the 6 emotional attributes to which Hashem creates the world. And what is the 7th one? Malchus. Kemidus Malchusa is Baruch, the Kras B'Shem Dvar Havaya. Malchus is Hashem's speech. Meshikosav, what's the connection between royalty and speech? There's a pasuk that says, Basher Dvar Melech Shilton. A word of a king rules. The words rule. In other words, most people, like somebody in this room would say, I need a house built for myself. Everybody would smile and say, okay, good luck. When a king says that, before you know it, they get to work and start building. All he has to do is speak, and things happen. So that's what the pasuk is saying. A king rules with his speech. The deeper meaning of that is that Hashem's attribute of Malchus is speech. And in the sheet that I gave you from the Zohar, from the words of Eliyahu Navi, if you look over here where he talks about the correspondence between the spheres and the body, the last one is Malchus. Malchus, Peh. Malchus is the mouth. meaning that even emotion that's connected to things outside of myself, but emotion themselves means that in me, I'm connecting things out of myself. It's very possible that I have a feeling of love for someone or a feeling, God forbid, of hate for someone, the other person not even aware. When I speak, that's when it really gets out there. So again, emotion is already a connection to things outside of myself. I think I mentioned this before, that even in English, if I'm not mistaken, the reason why emotions are called emotion was it means that there's something out there that's putting me into motion. It's moving me one way or another. But it's moving me within me. I know about it. I feel it. It doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily something which the other person or things out me are aware. When I speak about it or I do something about it, that's when it literally goes outside of myself and affects someone or something outside of myself. So same with Hashem. First comes Chokhmah, then comes Bina, then comes the sixth spheres, the emotion where Hashem starts connecting and relating to the creation of the universe, and then through his speech, an action that comes together, that's the creation, the actual creation of the world. And this is hinted in the last letter, which is the Hey, Kei Achreina Shel Shem Havaya. Why is that? Why does the Hey represent speech? What are the differences between Hey and all the other letters? Hey is the only letter that there's no substance in the letter, just air. Hey is Hevel Ha'olam and Alev, HaMeschalek Ma'hei Motzei Sapeh Acham Ha'gorim, which means it is two reasons. The first reason on the bottom of page 222 is that speech originates in 5 sources. And that is, it doesn't explain it here. I guess in the English they say the 5 oral articulations, which means when a person speaks, basically there's a voice. The voice is the same no matter what letter I pronounce. But this voice can either go through the teeth, and then you'll hear a samach or a zayin or other letters. It can either go through the tongue, then you'll hear a lamed, a nun. You go through the lips, and you'll hear a beis or a pei. It can go through the throat, and then you'll hear a ches, or it can come from the palate, and then you hear Hey is from the palate. So basically there are 5, it's called 5 gateways in the sense of the mouth to which speech comes. And just like we have it physically, there's something like that spiritually. That's connected to the fact that we have 5 fingers on the right hand, on the left hand, on the feet, 5 toes. And that's where the number 5 comes in a lot in Chassidus and Kabbalah. So 5 means that this breaks down the voice, which is general, it breaks it down to 5 directions. So all the letters of the alphabet that we have, which are 22 altogether, with the 5 final letters, we have 27. They all originate in the source, which breaks down into 5 different directions. So Hey is number 5. That's why it represents speech. The other reason is because speech initially is just the air that comes from it says it comes from the heart, Hevel Halev, and then it breaks down into speech. So we'll continue that tomorrow in Yirtzeh Hashem. Okay.
If someone's missing you said the fingers, that's where that word is expressed. If someone's missing like their fingers, does it make up in a different part of the body? Like
in general, that's what it's known that when people chas v'sholom missing something in one place, the body compensates for it in another place. But what it means is when a person, I didn't explain it because there's no time, but tomorrow I'll explain. When a person uses their hand to write, to draw, it's the same thing. The movement of the hand is the arm. If there wouldn't be fingers, God forbid, all the detailed forms and shapes I couldn't make. So what breaks things down to the details are the 5 fingers. If it's got a finger missing, it means there's going to be something deficient in the ability of breaking it down into details as much as it's supposed to be.
And it wouldn't make up in a different part.
Maybe yes, but in a different way, perhaps. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.